Okay. Then I will call the meeting to order, and we will start with the minutes of our last meeting. So, Jim, you're up.
All right, everyone. Good morning.
Morning.
President Jack Baker called the Goingsnake District Heritage Association meeting to order with 20 members and 2 guests present virtually. 45 people have listened to the recording on Zoom.
Wow.
Secretary Jim Terry read the minutes of the October 17th meeting, and they were approved as read. David Hampton read the financial report. Total monies as of November 21st, 2020 is $11,639.08. The report was approved as given. Maribel Chase's Cherokee Moment presentation was read from the October 22nd, 1870 Cherokee Advocate, the earliest Thanksgiving proclamation by Cherokee Chief Lewis Downing. She said the November 14th, 1874 Cherokee Advocate Thanksgiving proclamation to the Cherokee Nation by Chief William Potter Ross. She also read an 1829 letter to the Cherokee Agency regarding establishing boundary lines between the Cherokees and the Creeks. Jim Terry read an article from the January 6, 1915 Springdale News Leader, Springfield, Missouri, about Loony Rattling Gore's life. David Hampton's presentation was titled Genealogy, Basic and Cherokee Genealogy. David mentioned the Oklahoma Historical Society as a source for Oklahoma newspapers, and then he was working on a new Nancy Ward book. Jack Baker announced that Volume 10 of the Moravian Record will be available for shipment on November 23rd. Shirley Pettengill announced the NSU Combined Library Archives can be accessed now on the east side of the building. Troy Wayne Poteet gave us updates about the Trail of Tears meetings and newsletters. He told us about thousands of National Archives records that will soon be available on their website. President Baker adjourned the meeting at 11:43 a.m.
Thanks, Jim. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I'd entertain a motion for their approval.
I make a motion for the approval.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. And David, do you have Ruth's financial report? David?
David's picture has dropped off the screen. Yeah, there he is.
I muted myself, but I'm unmuted now. Okay, the total checking balance was $2,996. We had income from dues of $108. So the total checking now is $3,104. Our CD beginning balance was $8,643. Interest earned was $9. So our CD balance is $8,652, and a total of all monies today is $11,757.
Okay. Are there any questions about the treasurer's report? If not, it'll stand approved as given. And we appreciate Ruth for sending them in each month, even though she can't be with us. Okay. Next, we will have Mary Bell's Cherokee Moments.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My Cherokee Moments for this morning, I have taken some excerpts from the Cherokee Advocate during the Christmas holidays. And as with life, along with the good things that happen, there are sad things that happen. And my first is January the 3rd, 1894. And here are some articles that appeared in the Advocate. Daniel Drew, Catoosa, Kuiskui District, was thrown from his horse on Christmas and killed instantly. Thomas Crutchfield of Kuiskui District, and this is in parentheses, ex-U.S. Census enumerator, was shot and killed by Thomas Terrell, City Marshal of Chelsea, Christmas night. Mr. J.V. Nugent of Goingsnake, Richard Glenn, and C. Starr were on a hunt 2 days during Christmas week. Alice Beamer of Goingsnake District was murdered Christmas week while on his way from Siloam, Arkansas. It is supposed that he was knocked in the head with a rock by one of the Still Boys. One of the most notable events of Christmas week was the double wedding at the Presbyterian Church at Fort Gibson of Senator M.V. Benge to Miss Addie Starr and Honorable William Carey to Miss Emma McDonald. Reverend Williams of Muskogee officiated. After the ceremony, the bridal party were driven to the residence of Mr. and Mrs. Bowden, where they all sat down to a most delightful wedding dinner. And then here is another article from that same date. The undersigned has obtained letters of administration on the estate of George W. Mays, Sr., deceased, late of Saline District, Cherokee Nation, S.H. Mays, Jr., Administrator. And then my next date of the Cherokee Advocate is January the 2nd, 1895. Holiday Ball. The annual holiday ball was a success. Messrs. Hudson and Carter were floor managers. Among the lookers-on and chaperones were Honorable and Mrs. E.E. Starr, Superintendent and Mrs. M.R. Brown, Mrs. R.L. Comer of Claremore, ex-governor and Mrs. Bushyhead, and Mrs. R.B. Rutherford of Fort Smith, Mr. Edward Bushyhead of California, Honorable Charles Fry of the Board of Education, Judge Wiley, Mr. Eubanks of the Advocate, and the editor and Mrs. Butler. Among the dancers were Mr. and Mrs. Claude Shelton, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, Mr. and Mrs. J.L. Adair, Jr., Thomas Triplett and Miss Garner, Mrs. Rutherford, Dove, Alexander, and Miller of the seminaries, Thompson, Efert, Sharble, Starr, Lindsay, Wiley, Lamar, McBride, and Haygood of Fort Gibson, and Messrs. Brown of Missouri, Miller, and Merchant of Wagoner, Sid and Buff Wiley, Munns, Parks, Morgan, and Johnston, Judge McCombs, and Doctors Ross and Bushyhead. Seems like they had a good turnout for the holiday ball. Caleb Smith, Wednesday evening, December the 12th, Presbyterian Church. Friends and relatives witnessed the marriage of Miss Florence Caleb to Henry B. Smith. Young ladies from the seminary with Miss Sadie Dove entered and passed up the left aisle singing bridal chorus from Lohengrin. They were followed by the two ushers who were Messrs. Frank McSpadden and Polk Carter. Then came Miss Carrie Archer with Mr. G.F. Munns and Miss Irene Alexander with Mr. Mr. Joe Crafton. Then the maid of honor, Miss M. Eloise Rutherford, and lastly, the bride on the arm of her uncle, Mr. D.W.C. Duncan. Best man was Mr. Leon Ross. After the wedding, a reception was given by Mr. and Mrs. James Stapler at their residence. Mr. and Mrs. Smith left on Thursday morning for a short visit to St. Louis. The marriage of Mr. Frank McSpadden and Miss Cora Sixkiller was celebrated Wednesday evening, December the 26th at the Methodist Church. William Ryder, better known as Pete, accidentally shot and killed himself at Muskogee Saturday before Christmas. Mr. Ned Bushyhead of California, who has been visiting in the city for the past 2 months, left last week for his home. He will soon return to live among his people. He is a printer by trade, having learned the trade in the advocate office in the year 1849. George Miller, son of Cabin Miller of Illinois District, was killed Sunday before Christmas at Bragg Station by Dick Anderson. Anderson was arrested and was shot from ambush while under guard the same day, but was only slightly wounded. And on that note, that concludes my Cherokee Moments for this morning.
Thanks, Mary Bell. Just a comment on Ned Bushyhead, who had visited from California. I know we had talked about him in the few years past at our meeting, because he had gone to the gold rush with his brother Dennis, and then they stayed there. Well, Ned wound up staying in California, and Dennis came back after the Civil War and was elected chief. And supposedly he was elected chief because he had missed all the internal fightings among the Cherokees during the Civil War. But Ned was extremely interesting because he had moved to San Diego, that's where he was living when you gave your moments at this time.
Yes.
And he had been sheriff of San Diego County. And then, being a printer, he established the San Diego newspaper, and it's still the principal San Diego newspaper that's printed today.
Wow, that's interesting.
So then, and he never came back to live, but when he died, they brought him back, and he's buried in the Tahlequah City Cemetery near his brother Dennis and 2 or 3 of his sisters.
Wow.
Jack, didn't a descendant of his come to one of our Trail of Tears conferences many years ago, and he was in broadcasting or something in the
No.
media?
No.
Sorry.
Ned did not have any descendants, but it was Dennis Bushyhead's
Okay.
the great grandson, Jess
Okay.
Bushyhead, who was on NBC, worked with NBC, and he was the producer, I believe, of the Maria Shriver show several years ago, among
Okay,
other.
so kind of a family talent.
Yes. Okay. We appreciate that, Mary Bell.
Yes.
Do we have any old business to bring up? Not. I will mention our minutes stated that volume 10 of the Moravian records among the Cherokees was shipped, and the Cherokee Heritage Center has them. If you'd like to go by, you could, while they're closed, you can call Gene Norris and tell him you want to come by and pick up a copy. Did Curtis make it on? Is Curtis Rohr on?
No, Jack, he couldn't come. He couldn't attend this morning. He called me and said that he had a doctor's appointment and
Okay.
that he wouldn't get back home in time.
Okay. Well, yeah, and David had told me that he had said that, but that he might be back. But anyway, he has he's probably finished it by now, but 2 or 3 days ago, he had 100 pages to go, and he was talking about how fantastic it is because it's I think around 1835 to 38, and it goes through the roundup and them being in the camps during the summer of 1838, just before the forced removal. And so there's lots and lots of good information in there. Okay. Well, Luke, did you want to give us a presentation on our new website, thanks to the
Sure.
Grants and Aid Program administered by the Oklahoma Historical Society?
Before I start that, I do want to mention Donna Clark emailed me and wanted me to remind everyone that you can also get the volume 10, 1834 to 1838 at Talbot Library and Museum. Their museum and research library is open right now by appointment only, but all of their books are available online. And so volume 10 is March to Removal. This is Not My Home Anymore, and the years that covers 1834 to 1838. So Donna wanted me to remind everyone that that is available on Talbot's website.
Okay, thanks, Luke.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, so as Jack mentioned, I'm going to give a little preview of our new website. And of course, this our new website was made possible with a grant for the Oklahoma Heritage Preservation Grant Program. And this is a program that sets aside $500,000 to award grants to municipal, county, or tribal governments, and of course, nonprofit historical organizations. And that is how we qualified, because we are a 501c3 organization. And we received $5,000 through this grant for the creation of a new website and the purchase of electronic equipment.
Luke, we still can't see your screen.
It may take just a, let me see.
Coming.
So this is the landing page of the new website. And the address, of course, is www.goingsnake.org. And this new website went live in October of this year. And it includes a preview or an overview of our organization, and of course includes our mission statement. And of course, if any of you don't know, our organization was established for the purpose of researching, preserving, and disseminating knowledge of Cherokee history, culture, and lineage for the Goingsnake district, as well as all of the historic Cherokee Nation. So in our publications, we include not only history specific to Goingsnake district, but to all of the districts of the Cherokee Nation. We also include some information about the location of the district. This map shows where the Goingsnake district was located in relation to the other districts. Of course, it was one of the original 8 districts created in 1840. And of course, later, Koiskoy district was added in 1856. So we get a lot of questions about where was the district located. So I'm glad we have this map available on the new website. We also have a brief biography of the Cherokee leader known as Goingsnake. And it includes information about his arrival here in what is now, or what became the Goingsnake district. And that's why the district was named that, in honor of the Cherokee leader Goingsnake. So let's talk, I want to show you a little bit of the capabilities of the new website. First of all, there's a calendar of events for all association meetings. I kind of find it a little ironic that we established this new website in a year where we have no physical meetings, but we can list meetings of other organizations and affiliate organizations. So that's something I hope to develop in the future. If anyone has or anyone knows of an event that is occurring virtually, we can link that here on this calendar. And there's a little button to the side. If you click that, you can download that information on your smartphone calendar. And so the information, the time, downloads automatically to your smartphone. And you don't have to have an iPhone to do this. If you have any Android smartphone, it will work. Also, the new website accepts donations. As I said before, we are a 501c3 organization, so the donations are tax deductible. And so the donate button is located at the upper right corner of the website landing page. And we've already received one donation through the new website. Of course, we also accept our membership dues through the website. There are 3 different membership options. A $20 is a basic membership, and that includes the 2 issues of our journal. We have a $30 sustaining membership category. You also get the journal with that membership, and this extra $10 is a donation that helps us cover the cost of printing and publishing. And we do offer the $500 lifetime membership option as well. And of course, as I stated earlier, December 31st is the end of the 2020 membership year. So membership dues are payable again the beginning in January for the 2021 year. The website also allows people to submit questions and comments. We accept questions about what we do here at the association. We also accept questions about specific historic events or people. And David is really good about answering genealogy questions. I try to answer the basic questions about historical events. So we do try, we can't do extensive genealogy research through this portal, but we do try to answer questions. The website also offers the sale of individual copies of our history publication, the Goingsnake Messenger. A lot of times we have people ask if they can just buy the single issue, and so those are available on the website as well. We also have a comprehensive list of all of the articles published in the Goingsnake Messenger from 1984 until now, and that list is available on the website in PDF format. We also have a link to the Talbot Library and Museum where people can order all the back issues of the journal. So if you locate an article that you're interested in the list, you can go to this link and order the journal from Talbot Library and Museum. Another option that I'm excited about is anyone could submit an article or photographs or transcriptions for possible publication in the Goingsnake Messenger through the website. And of course, you can attach Word documents, JPEGs, PDF documents. So I'm looking forward to having this option for people to submit information. We also have a nice gallery of photographs from historic places within the Goingsnake district and other districts of the nation. I took some of these, and I think Gary White took some of these. And so if you have not yet looked at the photographs, take a moment to browse through those. We also have brief biographies of the executive board members on the website. If you want to know more about your board members, take a look at their biographies. And we also have links to other Cherokee history organizations at the bottom of our website. Of course, we've cooperated with a lot of these organizations in the past on various projects. Of course, Talbot Library and Museum is there where you can order books and our journals. Descendants of Nancy Ward Association is listed, as is the Trail of Tears Association. So briefly, I want to talk about YouTube. YouTube is something new for us also. Just last month, we created a YouTube channel where all of the recordings of our past meetings will be archived. So we currently have 4 past meetings archived, and we'll be adding to that every month. And of course, these YouTube is free of charge, so anyone can view these videos. Just go to www.youtube.com, and in the search box at the top, you can type in Goingsnake District, and that will help you find all of our videos. And once you're there, you can click on the subscribe button, and then you'll receive notifications when we upload new content to our YouTube channel. Of course, we also have Facebook. We've had Facebook for many years, but starting this year, we did daily history posts. So every day on our Facebook, we'll have an event on this day in Cherokee history. So if you haven't checked out our Facebook page, I encourage you to do so. I started doing this, of course, when we were all at home in quarantine, and a lot of people were bored, and so that's why I started the daily history post. But then afterward, I thought, well, this is probably something good to continue. It keeps our organization name in before the public, in the spotlight, and also it's a way for us to share Cherokee history, which of course is part of our mission. So that's my conclusion of the overview of the new website and the YouTube and Facebook.
Well, Luke, we certainly appreciate all that you have done in putting this together, and all that you do with the messenger and all the other work where you keep us going.
Well, you're welcome.
So any questions of Luke? A lot of work went into that, but
Not
it's going
not a question, but just would like to say how much I enjoy those Facebook posts that he puts on each day, and I see they're getting a lot of comments as well.
Yes, and I know the Tennessee chapter, the Trail of Tears, picks up those frequently and copies it to their post. So very good. So, well, we appreciate that, Luke.
You're welcome.
Jim Terry, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you are up.
All right.
Okay, can everyone see the title page of Jim's presentation?
I don't see it. Anybody else see it?
No,
No.
there it is.
It is.
All right. My presentation today is about records I found at the National Archives at Kansas City. While Loony Gord was an inmate at the federal penitentiary there from 1904 to 1910. I'll explain why I was interested in him and searched for his prison records as we look at his genealogy and prison records today. Next slide. This is the email I received from the technician at the Kansas City Archives, and the first you see the address there where you can search an inmate by his name. Once you've see if they have records for him, the second link will show you if they have scanned his file, and the link below that will show you if they have just scanned a photograph of him. So this is very helpful if you're interested in someone you might know that was an inmate at the Leavenworth prison. Next slide. This is Ancestor Chart David Hampton provided me, showing that this Loony R. Gord was the son of Jack R. Gord and Nellie Kingfisher. And you can see his rattling gourd ancestors go back to Johannes Conrad, who was mentioned in the, I think early on in the volume 1 of the Moravian Diaries, about 1759, as German trader that they were interested in seeing if he would help sell their book that was about their missions. Next slide. This is an article I read at last month's meeting about a different Loony Rattling Gord. He was the son of Jackson Rattling Gord and Elsie or Alice Wilson. But in searching newspapers.com for articles about this Loony R. Gord, I discovered more articles that I didn't think were about him, because nothing in this article talks about him going to Leavenworth or committing murder. Next. This is the article I found first on newspapers.com from the Tahlequah Arrow here that gives the details of him being arrested at the home of a full-blood named Black Fox 10 miles north of Tahlequah. And he killed a man named Sunday Christie. It mentions too here that Christie was shot from ambush while plowing his field a few miles west of Tahlequah last spring. And from what I've been able to determine, Christie died in May of 1903. Next slide. This shows arrivals at the jail. It included Loony, and charged with murder, and the Veneta chieftain on August the 5th. The next slide comes from the McAllister, Oklahoma, South McAllister Capital newspaper on August 13th. That just tells us that he was bound over to a grand jury without bail and is in the United States jail at Veneta. Next slide. This is Loony's mugshots from his penitentiary file. And I forgot to mention that when I first found this penitentiary file, I only knew of 2 Loony Rattling Gords, and the other one was the son of Thomas Rattling Gord and Eliza Abigail Loony. And I asked David if perhaps this was the man that the arrest records were about, and he told me no. He told me about this Loony Gord that was the son of Jack Gord and Betsy Guess. Next slide is something we'd also expect to find in a prisoner's file, his fingerprint file. Next slide. these next two slides are his judgment, sentence, and order of commitment on March the 26th, 1904. We see he was indicted for murder, pled guilty, and sentenced to 10 years in prison and fined $1,000 in the Northern District U.S. Court at Tahlequah, Indian Territory. Next slide shows us the rest of this order that says he was to be delivered to prison at Leavenworth, Kansas on the 29th of March, 1904. Next slide. This is Loony's physical description, and it gives us information that he was a farmer and could not speak English and chewed tobacco. But notice it also says his parents are not living, which isn't true from the genealogy chart which we've seen on him, and is likely an error in translation. It seems to be a problem that plagued him the whole time he was in prison here. Next slide.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said about his parents? I didn't quite catch that.
His parents were still alive at the time this record was made. I believe it was in 1904. Yeah, April the 5th, 1904. It mentions over here that it says parents living, no. But we know his father died after he was let out of prison in 1910, and his mother didn't die until 1926. So all we can assume is there must have been some error with the translation of his answers to these questions. And next, this is the authorization form, so the warden could open all his correspondence while he's in the prison, and we'll see quite a bit of that here in his file. Next slide. This is the physician's exam from April 1st, 1904. And note there's a questionable note here about his mother dying of consumption, which would be hard to predict in 1904 since she died in 1926. So again, this is a clue that he's having trouble communicating through translators at the prison. Next slide. This is three sets of records I'll show of letters. This one's called special letters, and I'm not sure if this is letters he sent or received, but we see in this group of letters not only Indian agents and attorneys listed, some friends. James Bird is listed in others as a friend. His sister was married to a Bird, so perhaps that's a relative of her. But we also see his father and mother mentioned here, Jack Gord of Gideon, and as well as Nellie, his mother. Next slide. This is a list of letters sent, and what was especially interesting to me is the mention of Eliza R. Gord, his cousin, and that happens to be my second great grandmother, who was married to Louis Cordray, the son of Wilson and Nancy Cordray. This also shows he was receiving or sent letters to his mother in 1910. And let's see, is these fathers not shown here that I see? Okay, next slide will show us letters that he received. And note that one of the writers, it says with an English language. And I forgot to point out on the last set of records sent that 3 of them are noted to be in the Indian language also. Again, we see his cousin Eliza R. Gord mentioned. And one of the facts that my grandmother, Blanche Irene Williams Terry, told me about was she was a translator for Cherokee in Cherokee courts for Cherokees that couldn't speak English. So it's kind of a shame we don't see their correspondence and what they were talking about, whether she was trying to help him with translation or not. I know there's one Rattling Gord relative that she appeared in court, and in the Dawes testimony, she's listed as the translator for them. Next slide. This is there are many letters copied to his prison records between the warden and the Indian agent and his attorney. And this first group is a group from 1906, and the last group will show is three from 1909 and 1910 up until his release on November the 25th of 1910. These letters deal with financial matters and these allotments. Many of them note that communicating these matters with Loony through an interpreter was not going smoothly. Next. This letter, excuse me, I lost my place here, just a second. Yeah, this next letter from the warden on September the 7th, 1906 to his attorney Benz talks about Loony not seeming to understand his financial dealings with his lawyer, his handling. And next I'm going to read a letter that I hope will give us a better understanding of what was going on between Loony and his lawyer, the warden, and his father. I've seen in Loony's Dawes application file that one of his allotment claims was contested by his father and a group of men, and that group of men did not include Christie, Sunday Christie, that he's accused of killing. Oh, I'll read this letter now. It says, "Dear Sir, yours of the 7th just received and will write you as to what I may say to Loony R. Gord, number 4044. In the first place, Loony R. Gord committed murder. He and his father employed me to defend him, and his father did not have $1 to pay me in the way of a fee. Loony Gord begged me to defend him, saying that I could have his surplus land for my fee, which was independent of his homestead. Of course, at the time, he could make me no deed to this land. At the same time, he requested me that I do his filing for him. He selected his own homestead." Next. "Wherever I wanted it. In order to do this, I had to have his power of attorney, which he gave me. I filed on his homestead, which he had selected an improved piece of land. His father contested this right to it. I wrote Loony what his father had done. He wrote me to just let it go and let his father have it. And I select for him his homestead as best I could. I did so. Loony gave me for the power of attorney to lease for any purpose the surplus land he promised to let me have, and those vouchers are only the second annual installment or advanced royalty to be credited should oil be found on the land. I don't know whether there is oil on the land or not. There have been no prospecting done by the next slide. Well, did I miss something here?
Yeah.
All the money, excepting the small amounts that he had signed heretofore, making 60 some odd dollars that I have gotten from these lands. I have got nothing from his homestead because I had to pay for the improvements before I could get the land for him. Now the question is whether he calculates to pay me for saving his neck according to his agreement or not. Because had the case went to a jury, he would have been unquestionably hanged or sent for life in prison. But on the account of a technical flaw, the district attorney agreed to a manslaughter verdict, which I considered a victory. Knowing the circumstances of his killing as I do, and the witnesses, next.
You're losing bias every time.
I think we missed a line there, but basically he was saying the witnesses testified not in his favor. He loses nothing in the operation or signing of the vouchers because I propose to keep a strict account of all money and have a complete settlement with him when he gets out. I have just promised his father some time ago that I would go to work and see whether or not I could get him out on executive clemency before serving the entire term out. But if he wants to go back on everything he said to me, I can't help it. This is about all I wish to say to Loony. I am yours with very kind regards, sir, George W. Binge. P.S. If Loony has forgotten that he gave me the said power of attorney, next, documents which contains his signature, tested and acknowledged by the officer under the seal. Yours very truly, George Binge. The next slide, we jump to the letters, and no, we don't. We're still looking at the letters in 1906. Yeah, this next letter from the warden to Binge, just a few days after the letter of September 10th that I just read, the warden explains Loony still refuses to sign the vouchers his attorney requests and signs and returns them with this letter, adding that the funds can be left with the Indian agent until he is released, when Loony says he will settle with his attorney. Next slide. This letter to the Indian agent from the warden on the 20th of December 1906 is regarding his allotments and mentions the disadvantage of not speaking English Loony has in taking care of his matters. Next slide. Now we skip to the records in 1909, this one from April 1st, and we see in this letter from the Indian agent in Muskogee is regarding Loony's allotment complaints. He tells the warden to advise Mr. Gord the matter has been taken up and he will be advised at a later date. Next slide. Here we see a letter from the warden to the First National Bank acknowledging his receipt of $133.19 that he is crediting on the books of the prison in favor of Loony. Next slide is dated on the date of his release, and it's to Loony regarding two letters from Indian agents Kelsey and Schoenfeld and a plot of land in section 26, township 21, range 12, The warden asked Loony to acknowledge the receipt of this letter and whether these are the land papers he requested. This is the end of the letters. We'll look at the next slide, which is Loony's trustee agreement. And note that when he is asked the full history of the crime he was sent here for, it's a different story than we get from the newspaper account of Christie's killing. He says, I got into a quarrel with Sunday Christie about some land at Gideon, Oklahoma, who threatened to stab me, and to protect myself, I shot him and pled guilty. Next document shows his work record while he was a trustee from July 1910 until his release in November the 25th. The code 44 shown each day shows that he worked at the farm, the Teamsters, and prison stables. Next slide. That ended his prison records, and I just wanted to show something about Loony's life after prison. This is his marriage record on the 11th day of June 1912 to Lucinda Ketcher. She was the daughter of Key Ketcher and Betsy Guess. Next slide is a school census from 1934, a year after Loony's wife had died. This shows his 7 children, 4 sons and 3 daughters, and shows us their birth dates and ages.
Excuse me, I'm having trouble reading. Did they list their colors as white? Does that say W?
Yes, it does. That's I hadn't noticed that before. And this is interesting because Loony, and I don't think this is correct, but Loony is shown in his dog's records to be a full blood as well as his parents. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
It also shows
his wife was Cherokee too, so I'm unsure why they're listed as white.
Well, frequently during this time period, the choices were white or Negro.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Even when in first grade in Tulsa, when they had us checking out the form and the teacher was writing on the board, that same thing. We were told to check white or Negro, and I raised my hand and I said, "What about Indian?" And she yelled at me and said, "You got to put down white." So,
oh, wow.
So I was, I think I must have been in 6th grade before I ever got to check other.
And my mother always told my brother and I that never check either one, but write in Cherokee. So
at this time, the schools would have been segregated. There would have been white schools and black schools. And so they were able, but as natives, they were able to attend white schools in Oklahoma. So that's why I think they probably put white in there, because they were going to the white school.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But also about this time too, some of the school census records actually does have Indian listed, because then they started getting money from the BIA for the Indians. So, but it depends on who the census taker was, I think, in many cases.
That's true. I found some census records years ago that they'd gone back and corrected blood quantums for some triracial people. maybe Fried, they were Ross's, but I don't remember if they were on the Friedman rolls or not. I just happened to find it in the census records and made copies of it.
Okay. Well, Jim, we appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I tried to find some information. I didn't know anything about Sunday Christie, and I had a book here about Ned Christie with genealogy charts on him. I couldn't find Sunday Christie among there, but I finally found him on Find a Grave. And oddly, they don't show his parents or a wife, but they show two sons who spelled his last name differently with an IE instead of a Y.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure if he's related to Ned Christie and his father that was a Cherokee senator or not. Do you know anything about Sunday Christie?
I don't right offhand. David could probably find something.
He was oddly enough, he's buried in the same Swimmer cemetery as Loony and his wife Lucinda. I don't think they have markers, or at least there's not pictures of one on the Find a Grave site, but there is a picture of Sunday's headstone, and most of it's unintelligible, and it's kind of odd. The Find a Grave says he died in May of 1905, which conflicts with the murder date that we know in the newspapers was 1903. I think maybe that 1905 is someone not being able to read the tombstone very good. But there's quite an inscription on the tombstone. It'd be interesting if someone was able to use that D2 chemical and clean the tombstone and read it. But you'd have to have the consent of the family to do something like that.
Could I ask what cemetery that Sunday Christie was buried in?
It's the Swimmer Cemetery in Lost City, Cherokee County, near Hulbert.
I know the Christie clan is so huge, you know, and there's several cemeteries.
Yeah, I figured, oh, surely he's related to he's in that clan and probably is, but I can't figure out what his connection is.
Just look to see who his parents were. They're Arch Christie's his mother, which I don't think is a close relation to Ned Christie. And his mother was named Cahokia. Sunday was an older guy. He was born about 1846, and he had been married 3 times, to a Peggy Alex, and to Lizzie Cumming, and to a Jenny Thornton. So he was quite a bit older than Loony was.
Yeah, Loony was just about 20, 21 years old when the murder happened.
Well, Nicole, I will put in a plug for the Oklahoma Historical Society. You're able to find those newspaper articles, Jim, thanks to the Oklahoma Historical Society's agreement with newspapers.com to put a lot of our newspapers online. Within the next 5 years, you'll have several times as many Oklahoma newspapers to look at.
That's wonderful.
So, okay. Well, we appreciate that. Now, of course, normally in December, we have our Christmas dinner. So I'm missing all the great food that we had in Proctor. But we also have read from the Moravian Diaries. So I want to continue that as to what happened at the Spring Place Mission 200 years ago. And of course, I want to be sure that you can see our Moravian star, which you'll see all over Winston-Salem. Can you see it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So they have those all over the Winston-Salem. Move over so I can read the diary a little more easily. I don't know if I might see if I can prop up my phone there. Oh, by the way, Jim, because we're going back 200 years ago at the Spring Place Mission that the Moravians operated in North Georgia. But in their diary for earlier that year, on January 9th, 1820, they write, our friend, the Rattling Gourd, brought his request to Brother and Sister Crutchfield to take in 2 of his sons to educate. He said they had been in school at Brainerd for a while and had come home for a visit. They had absolutely not been let go from that school because of bad behavior. We wrote to Mr. Hoyt. We wrote to Mr. Hoyt, who was at Brainerd, concerning this. He confirmed what the father had said. In the meantime, we could not yet promise anything about taking the boys in soon.
You know which 2 boys that was?
We have to look at their ages and determine, because this was 1820.
Yeah.
So, and then, okay, but I'll go back to December of 1820. And on the 4th of December, Sister Catherine Margaret Gann visited here with her very elderly grandmother, with whom we had a number of sincere conversations. So Margaret Gann was the daughter of Lydia Halfbreed, and the grandmother was Halfbreed's wife, Qualayuka, and also, was it Qualayuka or Chawayuka? David, do you? Anyway, she later was baptized in the Moravian Church and given the name Hannah.
Yeah.
But it goes on to say the old gray mother was especially very moved during this. And then also
The old gray mother.
in the afternoon, our pupil Pelican had the misfortune, that would be Pelican Tiger, I believe, had the misfortune of being thrown from a horse which he had ridden to water, and he broke his left thigh. Brother Smith carried him in his arms and took him into his house. Through the help of Mr. Utter and our neighbor William Thompson, both of whom are familiar with such things, we did what was necessary for the thigh to heal. The good Savior blessed our efforts and Brother Smith's faithful watching by him day and night, so that the boy was completely cured, and we owe him very special thanks. We let the boy's parents know of the accident through Elsie Hicks, who went home today. Then on the 8th and the following night, we had heavy storms and a lot of rain. On the 9th, our Nancy was fetched for a visit at home. We received a sincere little letter from Brother Charles R. Hicks. And on Sunday the 10th, it was once again a day that the Lord made for us. And it goes on to say, on the same day, instruction for the sacrament of Holy Communion was given to Sisters Talley and McNair. So that would be Nancy Van, who was James Van's sister, is the Sister Talley, and McNair is Delilah McNair, who was James Van's daughter. And then it goes on to the 11th. Pelican's mother came to see him and went home again on the 12th, completely reassured of his good care. When the mother got word that her son had been injured, then she certainly came to see him. Then on the 13th, our old acquaintance, Jenny Brown, and her niece, Sally Brewer, stopped in here and spent the night on their way to her sister, Tally. I talked with David yesterday, and Jenny was a sister of James Van, and Sally Brewer was actually her husband's niece. On Sunday the 17th, The heavy rain, which started on the 14th and continued today, did not allow anyone to come to the service, which we thus held in our room with our small house family. The water swelled so much that the bridge over the Big Creek or Holly Creek, as well as a part of the Conesaga Bridge, which has remained standing until now, the first flat from the ferry there, were washed away. People believe the Conesaga is 3 or 4 feet higher than it has ever been in human misery. So they dealt with the weather also. Jenny Brown and her niece, who arrived here completely soaked in the evening, had spent the whole day on the road from her sisters, a distance of 12 miles, and only arrived here through great detours and with many dangers. Even so, they dared to continue their journey home, also by detours, on the 19th. The mail was also somewhat interrupted by the high water, so that it arrived a number of days later and was very soaked. But that's on the 19th, which would be 200 years ago today. And then on Sunday, the 24th, Christmas Eve, Brother Schmidt preached about Hebrews 2:14 through 18, for which a number of attentive listeners actually came. Then we spoke with Mrs. Adair about her often expressed desire for holy baptism and found her in a desirable state of heart. She is a white person from Tennessee and many years ago married Mrs. McNair's stepbrother, Edward Adair. It's actually half-brother. Anna Rosina Gamble, who's writing this at the time, all the way through her writings, she calls half-brothers or sisters stepbrothers and sisters. So this isn't the only place she does it consistently. So she's a white person from Tennessee and many years ago married Mrs. McNair's stepbrother, Edward Adair, who at that time lived for the most part among white people. She knew that her older siblings were baptized as children. However, the younger ones were not, and she believed that she herself was in the latter category. We then tried to give her a clear explanation of the sacrament of baptism and told her that in the case that she really had not yet been baptized, we considered her as a candidate for this grace, but asked her to investigate further with her family what the case really is. And afterwards, she learned with certainty that she was baptized as a child. And at our Christmas Eve love feast, more than 80 people were in our hall. Joseph Vann, of course, in 1820 had the Vann house and was James Vann's son. Joseph Vann had also come at our invitation, and presumably for the first time since his school years, 1807 or 1808, joined us in kneeling before the little child in the manger and was quite happy with us. And on the 25th, which will be Christmas Day, Brother Gamble held a festival sermon about the call of the angel. Behold, I bring you great joy. And in conclusion of this, we baptized an adopted little son of Sister McNair with the name David Leroy. His mother, who died soon after his birth, was her stepsister. And that David and I could not figure out who the David Leroy was, or who the stepsister was, whether that was a half-sister, which we couldn't identify if it was, or an actual stepsister. And two, the second baptism was a little daughter of Mrs. Adair with the name Susan Julia, and during which the tears of the mothers who held their babies for baptism soaked them almost as much as the baptismal water. Afterwards, the usual catechism was held with the pupils to the joy of all present, and in conclusion, booklets and other gifts were distributed. Then it goes on the 26th, a free Negro from Tennessee preached in a Negro house at Vann's plantation, while black and brown people danced in another one. The latter, however, were soon stopped by Joseph Vann. And I might add, the Moravian missionaries always referred to the Indians as brown. It was never red, but always brown, the brown people or the black people. And it goes on the 27th and 28th, we had many visits from Negroes, mostly those who know us from long ago, to whom then also a word about Jesus' love for them was sincerely spoken. In this country, which is the Cherokee Nation, the Negroes do not have to work from Christmas until New Year's and go visiting where they want. So the slaves are all free to visit during this time. On the 30th, Sisters Hicks, Lydia, and Catherine Margaret Gann came from Uthakaluga, as well as Wadey and the mulatto Michael, which was our Negro woman Pleasant's son, and Sisters McNair and Tally to close the year with us. So Sisters Hicks would have been George Hicks's wife, and then Lydia was the former Lydia half-breed, which was George Hicks's mother, the mother-in-law of Sister Hicks, and Catherine Margaret Gann, who was also the daughter of Lydia. And Wadey was the father of Elias Boudinot and Stan Wadey. And I believe Michael had been sold by the Moravians to Wadey. And then, of course, Sisters McNair and Tally were once again Delilah Van McNair and Nancy Van Tally. Sister Gann and her mother Lydia were also present during this. And it goes on Sunday the 31st. This last day of the year was very busy for us, but in a welcome way. Early in the day, we spoke further with Sister Gann about her upcoming grace in the presence of her mother. Then it goes on in the evening, which is December 31st, there was a service for the confirmation of Sister Anna Dorothea Tally in her baptismal covenant. So this was Nancy Van. And of course, the Moravians always tend to change or add to their name, so they changed Nancy to Anna Dorothea. So then they sum it up for the year. In the year 1820, 5 adults and 1 child of our brethren and sisters were baptized in Spring Place, and also 3 children of outside friends. 1 sister was taken to the congregation. The mission in Spring Place received new workers, and Johann Renatus and Salome Gertrude Schmidt. However, Brother and Sister Gamble received the call to begin a 2nd mission post at Uthakaluga. It also pleased our Lord in this past year to pick the first flower from his garden here, when he took to himself the first fruit from this nation, our dear sister, Margaret Ann Crutchfield, which was the Peggy Van. So her loss lies close to our hearts. We miss her very much and will miss her for a long time. We grant her with our whole hearts, however, the great happiness to be allowed to intimately, sincerely greet the eyes, the mouth, the body wounded for all and us of his holy wounds. Then worship and glory and praise and honor be to him who has done such great things for us. Amen. So that was the end of the year and what was happening in the Spring Place mission 200 years ago. And I might add, the Cherokee Nation has a Moravian exhibit at our Capitol building at the square in downtown Tahlequah on the Moravian Christmas. Because Anna Rosina and her children, and earlier before 1820, had gathered a Christmas tree and all, and they believe those to be the first Christmas tree that was brought into Georgia, because the Moravians celebrated with a Christmas tree and other greenery. So if anyone's out and about and wants to go to the Tahlequah Courthouse and visit the exhibit, I recommend it. They've had it in the past. They had it several years ago. They had it in the Supreme Court building there in Tahlequah. So, okay. Well, that concludes our reading of the Spring Place Mission Diary.